Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Battle Cry, the first and only show on television that gets you up close every week with how India fights. From weapons and technology to defense to the humans behind these machines. This is Battle Cry. On the second episode of Battle Cry, we're taking off literally. In just a few days from now, the Indian Air Force will be placing a historic order. Its largest ever contract for an Indian-built fighter aircraft. That's right, a huge order for the light combat aircraft Tejas is all set to be signed this month. We get you up close with this Desi fighter jet, tell you what all the fuss is about, and we also strap in for an exclusive one-of-its-kind flight in this beautiful little aircraft. A terrific show lined up on Battle Cry. And over the next 25 minutes, we're going to take you through the saga of the light combat aircraft Tejas on the threshold of history. And I've got two people, and you couldn't find two better people to tell us. And join me as we bring you this fantastic story. Gaurav Sawant, Senior Executive Editor with India Today Television, and Sandeep Unithan, Executive Editor with India Today Magazine, are two defense journalists who've actually been up close with the Tejas and reporting on its many milestones. But this one we're bringing to you first on Battle Cry is the big one. It's history's biggest ever contract for an indigenous fighter jet. It's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of turbulence, but the Indian Air Force is about to sign on the dotted line for its biggest ever contract for the LCA Tejas. Welcome to the Flying Daggers, an Indian Air Force squadron with a unique distinction. It holds the distinction of being the only squadron currently flying an Indian fighter jet. That's right, the Tejas.
Our aim here is to raise the first LCA Tejas unit of Indian Air Force. It specializes in both the roles of air-to-air and air-to-ground. That is to say, it's a multi-role aircraft.
The best part about this aircraft is the indigenous hand in the mission computer, which enables us full capability to develop its weapon carriage as well as operational capability.
But as the pilots stack up the flying hours in this homegrown jet, there's history right around the corner. Because in just days from ever order for 83 Tejas fighters, a contract that will be the biggest in history for an Indian-developed and Indian-built aircraft. The Tejas, christened so by former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2001, has had a turbulent flight path through development. But through 2 decades, it has proven worthy of induction by the Indian Air Force. And with the upcoming mega deal for 83 aircraft of an improved variety, the Indian Air Force has stamped its confidence and faith in the Made in India jet. With the order, the Indian Air Force will finally operate 123 Tejas jets, a massive number that fully validates decades of aerospace toil. But the Tejas story has only really just begun. The 40 Tejas jets being inducted as we speak are of the baseline Mk1 variant. The upcoming mega order will be for 83 of the improved Mark 1A that features weapons capability and maintenance improvements. But the future of the Tejas looks strong too, with at least 2 pathways ahead. A more powerful Tejas Mark II or even a twin-engined Super Tejas. But it isn't just the Air Force Tejas that's seeing a big upsurge. The naval light combat aircraft has also been quietly creating history by becoming India's first fighter jet to land on an aircraft carrier deck, clearing the path to a future carrier fighter. The saga of the Tejas began decades ago, but its future has just opened up and opened big. Bureau Report, India Today. It couldn't be said better. It's taken 20 years since the first flight, but the story of the Tejas truly has only just begun. Gaurav, I want to ask you this question. You were there when the Tejas first flew, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. In fact, he's the one who gave it the name Tejas, which means radiance. an 83 aircraft order. How does it feel, Gaurav? You were there when the aircraft first flew. Did you ever imagine there would be a day when the Indian Air Force would be so convinced that it was saying, take our money, give us a lot of these jets?
You know, that's the big story, Shiv. The trust that Indian Air Force has placed in believing that Tejas will be able to deliver. And this is an aircraft that's come with a lot of technology denials. So you do the Pokhran nuclear test, you're denied the GE404 engines.
Yes.
But again, India overcomes that and the GE404 engines come. And your next dream is to get the upgraded engines. It's great that the Air Force places its trust in Make in India, because you can never be a strong air power with hoping to have a footprint from North Arabian Sea to South China Sea, to be not just an air army supporting force, but a transoceanic force, unless you build your own aircraft.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, Sandeep, so many derisive things have been said about the Tejas in the past. Isn't it true that for the Air Force to actually sign up now for 83 of these aircraft is a huge validation of the technology and all those years of toil that have taken place? This means that Rubicon has been crossed and this is a fighter aircraft.
Absolutely, Shiv. In fact, the 45 Squadron in Coimbatore has flown over 2,000 sorties the last 3 years, and they're extremely satisfied with the product.
It's not a toy plane.
It's not a toy. It's a fighter aircraft in being. Of course, there are a lot of issues to be resolved. The Air Force is working very closely with ADA and HAL to do that, and that is where this actually comes in. This 83 aircraft order is going to be the springboard for the next generation aircraft. There are so many other programs. There's the AMCA, there's the twin engine deck-based fighter. At least 3 programs benefit from this one single 83 plane order.
Yes, absolutely. You know, Gaurav, there are about 18 Tejas aircraft in service right now. There are numbers being added. There's an order in place for 40. This is going to be a fresh order for 83 of an improved variety. So even without any additional orders beyond that, because that's looking into the future, it's a fleet of 123 aircraft. That is very large. It's a historic large order for an Indian designed and Indian built aircraft.
Oh, absolutely, Shiv. Given that LCA Tejas would be the backbone of the Indian Air Force, replaces the MiG-21 fleet.
That's right.
Imagine an aircraft that came into the Indian Air Force in the 1960s, performed extremely well. The MiG-21's Soviet-era aircraft, we are still flying it. That needs to be replaced with something that's made in India. That needs to be upgraded. As Sandeep was very rightly pointing out, what's your dream? Your dream is to be a big air power. Your dream is to be a very potent force that will lead forces in the future, not just play a support role. Now, for that, you need to build your own aircraft. You need to build your own weapons, and you need to integrate them to deliver in war. This is a very important first big step.
Okay, so the first big step is this order that is right around the corner. It's going to be signed very soon. After that, it's getting this aircraft fit and ready for full combat operations. And like you heard those pilots say, they're now flying sortie after sortie. Over 2,000 sorties have been generated. An incredible achievement for such a new jet. Well, I actually had the privilege very recently to be invited to fly in the back cockpit of an LCA Tejas with a war hero pilot. Take a look at my experience in this historic little jet. Locked, loaded and ready for battle. This little jet has also had one hell of a month.
Bomb's gone.
From putting on a fearsome show of strength at the Vayu Shakti firepower exercise to enthralling the crowds at Bengaluru's recent Aero India show. The compact fighter is ready for a fight and ready for history with a mega deal around the corner. And in the aftermath of Pulwama, as India and India's Air Force teaches Pakistan a bloodied lesson, as the Indian Air Force gets set to sign up for 83 more of this Desi jet, India today was invited to meet the Air Force's newest member. Well, not just meet, but actually fly the light combat aircraft Tejas. First things first, I obviously couldn't wear just about anything for the flight. A team from the Tejas program helps me get into full fighter pilot gear. From the flying suit, to the boots, the G suit to counter the dangerous levels of acceleration force or G in a fast jet. And finally the fighter helmet with an oxygen mask. Now fully kitted out, I get to meet the man who'll be commanding the flight. And given the circumstances, I couldn't have possibly asked for a greater pilot to be in charge. This is Air Vice Marshal N. Tiwari, Chief of the National Flight Test Center that oversees the testing and proving process of the LCA Tejas.
In the aircraft also there are mirrors. We can use that.
Briefed and ready for the mission, we head out to the tarmac. On a scorching hot Bengaluru day, as we reach the flight line, the LCA Tejas jets finally loom into view. A pair of them from the actual Air Force squadron that flies them now. After several minutes of checks, we taxi out. The cockpit is a cozy little space with a multitude of flat panel displays designed to give pilots every possible piece of information they could need while in the air. Then we wait for clearance to take off. Once in the air, the pilot instantly banks sharply to the right, demonstrating the LCA's excellent responsiveness and agility in the air. Cruising out west of Bengaluru, the jet is throttled up and prepared for a list of maneuvers to demonstrate just how nimble this jet is. From a barrel roll to a high G loop to a few minutes where I'm given control of this fighter jet. The fully Indian control laws are super evident in this fighter's supremely excellent reflexes. The jet we're flying doesn't have weapons for obvious reasons, but don't let that fool you. The LCA Tejas already packs a formidable punch. The Tejas is already proven on a variety of weapons, including beyond visual range air-to-air missiles, heat-seeking close combat missiles, laser-guided or gravity bombs of the kind that were used in Balakot, and future weapon fits that include the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile and indigenous Astra long-range air-to-air weapon. From start to finish, I've spent just over 2 hours with Team Tejas. And it has begun to become clear why a fighter jet that was once derided is now being embraced by a new generation of Indian fighter pilots, just like the Mirage 2000 once was in the 1980s and 90s. The LCA Tejas' big journey has really and honestly truly just begun. There's a long road ahead. Final operation clearance for the first iteration of the Tejas has just come. There's going to be an improved version that's going to be inducted in much larger numbers, and then a brand new aircraft called the medium weight fighter, which is derived from the original Tejas, that will be possibly populating upwards of 200 fighters in the Indian Air Force. Well, the LCA Tejas took its first flight back in 2001. It was Atal Bihari Vajpayee who christened it the Tejas, Radiance. Well, for India's very own aviation effort, this hopefully will be an era of radiance. With the LCA Tejas here at the Yelahanka Air Base, with video journalist Shivamurthy, this is Shiv Arur for India Today.
What a flight! And let me now take this question to Shiv. Shiv, what an experience this must have been. And you've flown a number of aircraft from the F-16s to F-18s to Saab Gripen and the Tejas. Give us details of the experience.
It was incredible and incomparable, Gaurav. Yes, I have flown, aircraft which are considered, more capable. But let's remember that these are built by countries which have legacies of aviation innovation and technology. So it wouldn't be fair to actually compare it in that sense. But in terms of the honor and the prestige of actually flying in an aircraft where much of it is Indian. It's been built, designed by Indian scientists, like you rightly said, under huge technology denial regimes, was a huge sense of pride. But even technologically speaking, this is a beautiful aircraft. It's not just about honor and the fact that it's Indian. It's a very capable fighter. It handled beautifully in the air. I'm not a test pilot, unfortunately, but it was a fantastic experience. I had the honor of flying with an Air Vice Marshal who is a war hero from Kargil. You know him very well as well. So this was an incredible experience, and I can tell you that having met the pilots who now fly operationally with the Tejas in Sulur in Tamil Nadu, this is not a token gesture by them. They have embraced this jet. They love it. They can't wait to see more improvements in it. So my experience in it was absolutely the best.
Shiv, what about cockpit comfort? You've flown aircraft from the Soviet bloc, you've flown Western aircraft. Where does the Tejas actually fall in? Is it east or is it west or is it a combination of both?
It was actually more west. That's one of the first things I actually found, that ergonomically, in terms of comfort, it seemed to be something that did take into consideration pilot comfort, the ergonomics. I was told, I flew in a prototype vehicle, and I was told that there are many improvements that are being seen in the series production aircraft, which I unfortunately couldn't see. So what I saw was only a very small part of how much better the cockpit apparently actually is. And in fact, the designers of the Tejas have already envisaged a highly modern new cockpit with new holographic displays, which they plan to implement in some of these aircraft actually going forward. So they love it. They think it's a very hardy, very responsive fighter, excellent cockpit, good amount of ergonomics and comfort within the cockpit as well. So the future iterations of the aircraft will be mid-air refuelable as well. So extended missions will actually be possible. But I also want to tell our viewers that the thing about the Tejas is, being cheap to build, being our very own fighter, means it's independent. We don't need to depend on foreign suppliers for this. If there's a spare part issue, it's our own. We can fix it. We can bring people from Bangalore or wherever else to actually fix the aircraft on site. There is none of the other problems that have been attendant on foreign supplied aircraft. And that's also why this is a fighter that can be built in large numbers, crucial to the Indian Air Force's requirements, because believe me, when you see the numbers in this next story, you will know what the shortage of fighters in the Indian Air Force is really all about. I don't want to call it a crisis, but this is a very serious issue.
India's very own light combat aircraft has turned the corner. With miles to go, but very much welcome, finally into service. A service with an appetite for the fighters at a time when its squadron numbers are in free fall, which at 32 squadrons is a full 10 squadrons short of its required force levels for a full-scale war. Here is a lowdown on where things are at. With only a dozen in service and counting, the LCA Tejas will gradually enter the Indian Air Force in large numbers to replace the old MiG-21 fleet. But in the meantime, the Indian Air Force will be fighting hard to stop the bleeding. When production rates of the Tejas ramp up, it will enter service speedily. But until then, the Indian Air Force has parallel efforts to build its fighter strength. First off, India's 36 Rafale jets will begin arriving in India this year and will be deployed at 2 squadrons, one each at Ambala and Hashimara in the east. The Indian Air Force is also considering an extended order of 18 more Su-30 fighters. That will take the fleet strength of the Sukhois to 290 fighters. Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force is also looking to acquire 21 additional MiG-29s from Russia, which has offered them at a bargain since they are to be built from old unfinished airframes. The Indian government is also looking to build over 100 fighters in India. A multi-billion-dollar contest that will see 7 aircraft compete, including the Rafale, Super Hornet, F-16 and Eurofighter Typhoon. As China and Pakistan continue to ramp up aircraft numbers, the Indian Air Force has a tough job in a very tough neighborhood.
You know, Sandeep, the fighter shortage, the depletion of squadrons is something that's very easy to, overlook, especially in the public view. You know, you see all these fighters, there are headlines about the Rafale being inducted, this big contract for the Tejas. But if we actually put down the numbers, 42 squadrons is what, the Indian Air Force says it requires to fight a two-front war in case hostilities break out. We have way less than that. The numbers tell a pretty disturbing tale.
Very dismal, Shiv. This is the smallest Indian Air Force we're looking at since the 71 war. The Air Force has projected a requirement of 42 squadrons. It is 32 squadrons or less.
Yeah.
And that gap has not been filled for many years now. And now it's hoped that the LCA, the 83 aircraft that are coming in, will replace the last of the MiG-21, the Bisons, which are going out of service, the 5 or 6
which
squadrons.
were used in the post-Balakot skirmish
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah.
So that is, the irony is that the LCA was supposed to replace the MiG-21. It didn't come for various reasons on time. And today the Sukhoi 30 is the backbone of the Indian Air Force.
Right.
So now it's been, as they say, der aaye par durust aaye. The LCA is now finally coming in the numbers that would be required to make the Air Force, to help the Air Force bridge this huge gap between the projected thing and the actual numbers.
Yes. Gaurav, you know, the two-front war that the Indian Air Force chief also said when you interviewed him recently, a lay person might wonder, why do we need 42, combat fighter squadrons? Can you explain this in the context of this two-front war? Is that possibility, really on the horizon? And why does the Air Force insist on having so many fighter squadrons?
Shiv, the Air Force motto is the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war.
Yeah.
But if you don't have numbers, you will bleed in peace. And that's exactly what is happening with airframes and aircraft and engines getting life extension after life extension. We are the only Air Force that's flying the MiG-21s of the 1960s and now the Rafales of 2020.
Yeah.
So look at that vast gap.
Incredible.
That Indian Air Force is still flying, still maintaining, still servicing. You have China that's rapidly modernizing. You have Pakistan that's actually pumping in everything only into its aircraft, and China subsidizing it. That's not happening for us. In Balakot, you saw it's the Air Force that took the lead, even in counter-terror operations, and that are operations of the future with the Air Force taking a lead, not just supporting the army, but actually ensuring that soldiers are saved and air warriors take the lead. Now, from North Arabian Sea to South China Sea, if you want your footprints all over, you need a very potent Air Force and force multipliers, which is why you need the fighter jets, you need the mid-air refuelers, you need the radars, and you need the air defense shield.
Absolutely. And even while the LCA Tejas is inducted in large numbers, hopefully the rate of production will go up, because that has been a concern as well. Sandeep, aviation enthusiasts around the world always marvel at the Indian Air Force because of the number of different types of aircraft we have. We've got Mirages, we've got Jaguars, we've got MiG-29s, we've got Su-30s, we've got all kinds of other aircraft. We've got the Rafale coming in, we've got the MiG-21, the MiG-27s were just recently, retired. So there's an inventory nightmare as well. Do you see that, as having played a part in the fact that we don't have enough squadrons, and could it be a problem going forward?
Shiv, you've hit the problem on the head. The Indian Air Force is the only large air force in the world that has this astounding, diverse array of fighter aircraft.
Yeah.
Now, the hope is that with the LCA now finally coming in the numbers, you will be able to standardize the Air Force on 3 basic platforms.
Yes.
You'll have your Su-30s that are your heavy fighters, your Rafale to be the medium fighters, and the LCA being the light fighter, which will come in large numbers. Exactly. So they are planning to standardize on these 3 fleets. So hopefully this chaos that we've seen over the last 30, 40 years, almost a dozen different fighter aircraft types, that's all going to narrow down to 3.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is something we can only hope for. Let's see what the future has in store.
Let's see what the future has in store. As far as the LCA Tejas is concerned, very happy to say the future is now. That saga actually begins, and the many requirements and problems the Indian Air Force has had with too many or too few aircraft of a certain type will be resolved. This is a made in India fighter, and it will address many of those issues. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Battle Cry. Sandeep and Gaurav and I will see you at the same time again next week. Remember, India will only have realized its true strength if no human needs to be sent into harm's way and no weapon ever fired. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, Like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.